Okay, so we are ready to start analyzing the Pirc, and well, we have e4, d6, d4, we'll play knight to f6, and we know the main move here is knight c3. This is the main position of this course, and here, as you probably know, white has a lot of systems to face the Pirc. The Austrian attack with f4, bishop e3, bishop g5, the English attack with f3, bishop e3 and queen d2, the fianchetto positional lines where white plays knight to f3. We'll study all of this during this work, but first, before focusing on knight c3, we need to study bishop d3 or even f3. These moves are considered sidelines, but still it is good to have an idea. So let's start with bishop d3. This move is playable, but I think black equalizes easily, and the thing is, the bishop on d3 is not well placed. It is just protecting the e4 pawn, but think about it. He might need the bishop on e2. One day he'll play knight to f3, we can play a move like bishop here, and the bishop on d3 is not doing much. It would be much better if it was on e2. So after bishop d3, we have a lot of moves. We can, of course, continue in Pirc style, or even King's Indian defense style, but considering he played a passive move, I don't mind occupying the center with e5. So here I chose 2 games, and by the way, you'll find all this on the PGN files. In one, white took, and this is not ambitious at all. c3, we'll see this move is okay, but still a bit passive. Maybe d5. But the problem with playing d5 is that his bishop is worse than ever. I can play a quiet move like bishop e7, I castle, then I play with c6. Now his center is at risk. If he takes, I bring a side pawn to the center. This is great news for us. And if he plays c4, then I can play knight to a6, and I really like my position as black. I mean, his bishop on d3 is crashing into the entire pawn chain, and I see a lot of queenside play already. And if he plays at d5, as we were analyzing, we can play other variations too. We can play in King's Indian style, as I was saying, and sooner or later we'll have knight h5 plus f5, thus attacking white's center. So let's start with c3, and this was played in a game by, I know Grishuk was black, but I'm not sure about white. It was a Chinese Grandmaster, Su, okay. Okay, white played this, and Grishuk, here he played d5. And I love this because once we play d5, we get at least equality, and maybe more. He doesn't have knights in the center, so, well, in the game we see this. If he takes on d5, this is too powerful already. Check, queen here, knight c6, and it looks like that position is super equal, but I have to say black has an edge already because white, he's not able to finish his development, and if he plays a move like knight f3, I don't mind trading. I can play bishop here, I move my bishop, g4, f5, I can queenside castle, and by the time I queenside castle, my rook is already on d8, and the other rook goes to e8. So it is fair to say black has an initiative in this position. And worst case scenario, we are talking about equalizing in the opening, which is for black, it is great news. So let's see, c3, d5, white plays this move, knight takes e4, and in the game, white plays knight to f3. Well, bishop takes e4, well, if he trades queens off, then I have an endgame with the bishop pair. I don't mind having the king on d8, because we don't have queens on board. And if he plays queen a4 check, this is too ambitious. Queen takes, bishop c6, and, well, this is only move, h5, and yeah, the show goes on. Black is much better, and white is having issues development-wise and light squares-wise too. So okay, c3, d5, d takes, knight takes e4, knight f3. This position reminds me of the Petrov. You probably saw positions like this before. Here black plays this. Now the idea is to play this maneuver. Therefore we trade white's best bishop. We know bishop c1 it's okay, but bishop c2 is much better. With bishop c2 he might have a kingside attack. So I love this maneuver. And in this position after bishop h5, I think we are just fine. We can even consider placing the knight on e6, and we blockade his e5 pawn. White here, he should have castled. I can play bishop e7, I castle bishop here, knight e6, or even, if I'm allowed, I can play a5 to stop his queenside advance. But here white played this crazy maneuver, and I say crazy because he doesn't have any development and his king is still in the center. We know that going after material when you have the king on e1 is not a good idea, so black doesn't even care about c6. He lets this pawn go, and you can check the entire game. Black had a nice position already, with white's queen at risk of being trapped. This is very good stuff. So yeah, even a move like bishop e8 would be working here. So you can check the entire game, reshook, equalized with no problems. And actually, after this, before white played this entire maneuver, black even got the advantage. So the last variation we have to check here in this bishop d3 line is e5. We saw c3, we saw d5. Let's see what happens if d takes e5. Here we just retake, knight f3. Here I like knight c6, even bishop d6 we can play. But here we have another game also played by Grishuk, where he played bishop c5. And I like this because knight takes e5 is not even possible. I mean, it is, but you know, the resulting position is not ideal for white with his king on f2. And knight takes e5. Pay attention here because bishop takes f2 is the right move. If we play queen d4, which looks like the correct move order, he has bishop b5 check, c6, queen takes, bishop takes, and knight to f3. And at the end of the day, white ends up being up a pawn. But bishop c5 is not binding, and we know that if we play this here, we continue with bishop takes f2, followed by queen d4. So white castles, black decides to play queen e7, knight c6 is also possible. I mean, I don't mind playing quiet moves. The game is already equal, and we know it because his bishop on d3 is not the greatest bishop in the world. On the other hand, we can improve our bishop with this maneuver. Even one day, I don't mind placing my bishop on b7, and black is just fine. In this game, we'll see that Grishuk played this aggressive variation as black, and I get the feeling he was trying to avoid symmetrical lines. He was playing for a win, and indeed he won against the 2400 player, so you can check the game too. Here I like this because, as you can see, if white plays this move, then he's risking too much because he's got the king there. But black, on the other hand, he can try this move because our king is still on e8. We are not committed to kingside castle. In fact, we can castle queenside and then we fire a kingside attack. So yeah, you can check this game. It is interesting. Black eventually won, but this variation, as I said, is not binding. We can play something else. Even here, we can play knight c6, we can play quietly, and black, he's just fine. There's something, this is a positional detail I want to point out, and this is going to happen in this variation, and also when white plays a quick f3. We know, suppose here, I'll just play random moves. When he plays with f3 or bishop d3, in this sort of positions, we know bishop d3 isn't a good bishop. On the other hand, bishop c1 has a lot of value, so remember this idea, try trading this bishop c1 off. If somehow we can achieve this trade, then we'll have a huge positional advantage. For instance, suppose I play knight h5. Here I have the chance of playing knight h5, so I'll take it. Otherwise, let's say I play knight here. Then if I achieve this trade, this is great news for black, because my bishop is awesome, whereas his bishop is terrible. And well, I'll have full domination of dark squares. Now, coming back to the Grishuk game we were analyzing, suppose I play knight c6, this, let's say I play bishop e7, and then he plays this move. Then I don't mind the trade. This is what I'm looking for, because this bishop is powerful and we know how bad bishop d3 is. And here I dominate on light squares. It is key to understand this concept, and it is going to help you in a lot of lines, not only in the Pirc, but in some Sicilians as well. So let's say here white plays differently. Again, as I was saying, I don't mind going for trades like this. Bishop takes f3, bishop g5, and then I get the magic trade. Of course, this is an example. I'm just playing random moves, but I want to show you the positional trade, and we'll see more of this during next chapters. So that's all for this video. We saw bishop d3. Here again e5, whether he plays c3, d5, or even if he takes, we are doing great as black, so nothing to worry about. Before we close this chapter, I would add that if he plays knight f3, I can just take. Then the knight on d4 is not even protected, so I can take the chance to do the fianchetto. I can castle as well, and then I have maneuvers like knight g4 and knight e5. Even a move like knight c6, this would be attacking his knight, and if he takes, I just bring side pawn to the center, and I also open the b file plus my bishop's diagonal. So there's no variation that white can play and get an advantage at the same time. if he plays bishop d3, we're going to equalize, and of course we can win later during middle game or even end game. So that's all for this video. Hope you found it useful, and of course I want to see you guys during my next chapters. Thank you. Okay, so we continue our work on the Pirc defense, and now we'll focus on another variation. As you can see, this game started with d4, but soon we'll have our position knight f6 and the f3 variation. So white plays this because he's been flexible, and depending on what we play, he can also transpose to a d4 game. So, for instance, if we play this, now he can play c4, oops, not bishop c4, c4, bishop here, knight c3, and suddenly we have a King's Indian defense Samish variation. If you happen to be a King's Indian player, then this move order doesn't have to be bothering you, but suppose against d4 you play something else, then you don't want to play a King's Indian. So when he plays f3, we have to act soon. I mean, we have to attack the center, and we don't want to give white any room for moves like c4, knight c3. That is why I like e5 here. So e5 is going to be our move, and now since we have this threat to take on d4, white doesn't have any tempo to play this move. Here we take. Well, as you can see, he has to waste another move with the queen, so this is clearly favoring us. We can even think about taking this diagonal next. So e5, white's main move here is d5. This makes a lot of sense. He wants to grab space and continue with c4, but we also have to see what happens if he takes on e5. Well, here we can just take. The queen trade is good for us. Remember, this is a queenless position, so having the king on d8 is just fine. Remember that his bishop is a bad bishop, and we have to go after this bishop c1. So here, for instance, I can try this, knight bd7 plus bishop c5, and then I get the magic trade, as we said in the previous video. And, well, here we are looking at an equal endgame, but a lot of pieces left, and of course we can win later. A move like c6 is also required, because then we can hide the king on c7, and also if we have a pawn on c6, we stop possible moves like knight d5 or knight b5 by our opponent. So here, well, the last move I would check is bishop c4, but here, even if we play bishop e6, we're safe. Maybe you know this structure from the Philidor defense. We have double pawns, but e6 is doing great because we control key squares, especially because we control d5. We can place our bishop on d6. We have a super solid position, and because the f file is open, we can eventually consider a kingside attack. So it looks better for white, but reality is it is not, and black has great chances, even if we end up with this suspicious pawn structure. Okay, so I don't think our opponents are going to take on e5. I mean, if they play the f3 variation, it's because they want to play d5 and grab more space. And here I like the simple bishop e7. As we discussed during the previous video, what we want to do here is trade bishop c1 off. Again, this bishop f1 happens to be a bad bishop, so all we have to do is achieve this trade, and then we'll have a nice positional advantage. Okay, white plays bishop e3, and here, since we are allowed, we can play knight h5. I mean, he's not controlling this square. Otherwise, I can also think about moves like knight f d7. I still have this positional threat, and why not, I can try driving my knight to better squares on the king side. So here I like this move, and well, here we have two variations. This is probably the most logical one because for the time being he stops this move, and we also have to check knight to e2. We can start with queen d2, which is stopping the trade, but here we have the simple h6. No matter what white does, we play bishop g5 next, and we get the trade. We know h4 is not even possible because we take. So knight e2, I play this, and here we have a nice position which resembles the king's Indian defense. White plays e4. Here I can trade on e3 already, but I like this move first because I want to play knight a5, and then I place my knight on c5. By playing a5, I also make sure he doesn't play b4, kicking my knight back from c5. So this, I love this example by black, where he trades on e3 and then he continues with this move. We don't mind playing an endgame because the positional advantage we have is huge. Bishop f1 is clearly a tall pawn in this position. It actually works as a pawn because it doesn't have any diagonals, and we have full control of dark squares. And, well, maybe in the future we can even think about opening that position on the king side. And this endgame, I know it looks drawish, but it is not. By having the pawn on g5, we can also put pressure on the h-file. And this was actually played in a game, you can check it, and black eventually won. So this line, it's simple. f3, e5, d5. We know the positional trick. We have to go after bishop c1, and then we can choose whether to play knight h5 or even knight f d7. This is the same. I can play h6 plus bishop here, and there's nothing white can do to stop the trade. Even if he plays a move like f4, I take, bishop takes, and this is even worse for white, because if he plays quick f4, the e5 square is available, and this e4 pawn is sort of backwards. Maybe his bishop finds a better square on d3, but still a passive bishop and crashing into the pawn structure. So knight h5, instead of queen d2, which is what we just saw, h6 and bishop g5, he can try playing knight e2. But the problem of this move is that we can play this for free. We are not wasting any tempo on this variation, and then he can try this. But honestly, this entire maneuver of keeping the bishop on f2, he keeps the bishop through, but we get a lot of activity right from move 7, so I don't like this variation for white. It's been played in a game between two grandmasters, and that is why I'm covering it. It is Hilarp against Asmai-Parashvili, and you'll find this on the PGN files. And here black played this move. I think this is not accurate because white in the game has the chance of playing h4. This is a move he didn't have before, but now he does. And then, well, as you can see, he's fighting too soon, and our pieces are a bit awkward. So if he plays knight e2 here, okay, knight h5, knight e2, bishop here, bishop f2, I like playing this move first. So what is the point of this? I'll have f6 available. If this, I can play this, and if h4, I don't have to waste the tempo playing g6, I can play f6, and then he cannot advance on the king side. In fact, it looks like he's made some weaknesses there. And okay, this move again, I think this is an improvement. I run away before he plays h4, and if he plays this, with this threat, I can still play f6, and if this, I jump to f4. The key is, I haven't played this move. Therefore, I avoid what happened in this game. Here black played this, and now white wins too many tempos, advancing his pawns, and this is still playable, but I get the feeling white is being too aggressive and he's developing a kingside initiative. So my improvement would be here playing bishop h6 instead of this move. And also remember that here, after bishop e3, if you don't like knight h5, you can also check this move, because our knight improves a lot and we still want to do this trade. I don't see how white can possibly stop this move. And again, if he tries f4, he's giving a lot of positional pluses to black. So this line with f3, I mean, it is possible. It's leading to, let's say, equal chances games, but we won't have any issues opening wise. So check the game Hilarp against Asmai-Parashvili. There you'll find all the analysis we made in this video. And that's all for this variation. I hope you found this useful, hope you could learn something, and of course, I want to see you guys during my next chapters. Thank you. Okay, so we continue working on the Pirc defense, and now we'll focus on the fianchetto variation. As you can see here, this is one of the systems white can play, and this is actually a positional line. So, as black, we have a lot of resources to deal with this and hopefully get some active play. So here white, he usually develops a knight to e2. If he plays knight to f3, the main issue is that we can pin in a lot of variations, and this is a bit uncomfortable. Also, when he plays knight f3, he's blockading his bishop's diagonal, so knight to e2 is much more flexible, and you'll understand why keeping this diagonal open is important. You'll understand this in a couple of moves, and just to be clear about knight f3, worst case scenario, we can play as we play in the main line, and eventually we can transpose to the game we are going to study. So white, your opponents, they are going to play knight to e2, and here I like knight bd7. This is the natural move in the Pirc to play knight bd7, because after all, the idea is to play e5. This reminds me of the King's Indian defense. So knight bd7, here, I know this sounds obvious, but a lot of players, they play knight to a6. The idea is to play c5, but I don't like this move order much. I mean, if I have to choose, I would play knight bd7. Here, for instance, with knight a6, I mean, it's not possible yet, but in a lot of variations, we can talk about queen trades. However, if we play knight bd7, there are no possible queen trades, and that's good because we are looking for some action. And now we'll see another advantage of playing knight bd7. He castles. Our idea is to play with c5. e5 is possible as well, but then he can try closing that position, and our bishop on g7 is not special. Well, the same goes for his bishop, but we can try playing a Sicilian setup. Why? Because white, he showed his cards already, his castle kingside, so he's not going to attack there. I mean, he has the king on the king side, so an attack is not likely to happen. And we know that when we play Sicilian, what we are worried about is white fighting there. So now we know the king is there, we can try playing a Sicilian, and this reminds me of the dragon variation. So we basically decide to play with c5, and as I was saying, we'll see some advantages of having the knight on d7 rather than having the knight on a6. Okay, so till this point, we are following the game Nepomniachtchi against Rishchuk. You'll find this on the BGN files, and we'll see white played h3. He has other options like d5 or even a4, but first let's take a quick look at why h3 is so important. In this move, when white fianchettos, he has to play it, because otherwise, suppose he plays this, he has to be concerned about stuff like knight g4, even if we take... I mean, we have a lot of champs, and this is critical. Even bishop g4 might be annoying, so if white ends up playing a move like f3, this is not great looking, by the way. And second, his bishop is not great, so that is why white plays h3. It's like a prophylactic move, and it is required. Even when white plays the fianchetto against the king's Indian defense, he plays h3 sooner or later. So that is going to be the main move of our analysis, but first let's see what happens if he plays something like d5. If he plays this, well, he's closing his bishop's diagonal. It doesn't look like he'll play something like e5 soon, and the queen side is ours. So rook b8 is our next move. If possible, we'll play with b5. So he plays a4, and now another key move, b6. Why b6? Well, if we play a6 first, trying to play b5, he'll play this move, and now he'll take en passant. Well, we still have some interesting ideas on the queen side. Our pawn structure is weak, true, but we do have ideas. The b file is open, so even if we play this variation, we have activity on the queen side. But here, before playing a6, I can play b6 first. Now if he plays a5, I don't even have to take, I can play b5, and I got what I wanted. And, well, if he plays anything else, I'll go a6, b5, and little by little, I advance on the queen side. So, yeah, the game I found, white played h3, a6, and now there's no way to stop b5, even if he plays queen d3. Well, first, he is exposing himself to moves like knight e5, but even if I have to sacrifice a pawn, I'll do it, because, well, he's likely to lose material if he takes. This is like a nice version of the Benko gambit for black. Every single piece is playing, whereas white, he's lacking coordination. Queen b3. I think I even have bishop d7, c4. Yeah, this basically plays itself. So if he plays d5, I think d5 is a mistake, to be honest, because rook b8 is so straightforward. a4, now b6. This plan is easy to remember because, as you'll see, rook b8 plus b6, we'll have to play it in the main lines as well. And as you can see, a6, b5 is happening. In the game I found white played h3, a6, now white decides to attack on the king side, but the thing is, he doesn't have many pieces to attack there, he doesn't have targets, and even if he continues advancing, apart from this, I can consider knight h5, and it looks like he's just throwing pawns away. So in the game, white plays this move, but yeah, black runs away before this move happens, and honestly, I think black is much better. We have a queenside attack already. We have a lot of ways of entering his position, whereas white's kingside attack is just an illusion. If he keeps on advancing, he's going to give us more and more squares. So, I mean, he clearly made a mistake in his strategy. So d5, again, I think it's white is making a decision too soon if he advances. So suppose he plays a4. He's trying to stop our ideas, but he's not committing himself to taking or playing d5. So this a4 is another possibility. We'll play rook b8 anyway. If he plays d5, well, we know this position already. And if he plays something else, like rook e1, I can still play b6. Now, we understand why rook b8 is an important move. There's no e5 for white, there's no rook hanging on a8, and a6 b5 is happening no matter what. So I really like this position for black. And well, the other option apart from h3, I mean, we saw d5, we saw a4, well, d takes c5, this would be a mistake too, because we play knight takes c5, and we are going to play the main line, but we'll have an extra tempo as black. Why? Now you'll see, in the main line, we play c takes d4 and knight c5. So, if white plays this, he's just helping us. It's like we get the same position, extra tempo. Okay, let's see h3. This is that position we want to analyze. And here, rook to b8. Same plan, no matter what white plays, the rook belongs to this square, and, well, if a4, we know how to play, b6, a6, b5. Even bishop a6 might be part of our strategy, depending on what white plays, but rook b8 is a move we have to play. Remember, we have to get out of this diagonal, and here white decides to take on c5. Well, if he plays, as I said, d5, well, here I can play b5, and if a4, b6, honestly, I see no improvements for white. It looks like he has to take on c5 at some point, or to play a move like bishop e3, and then we can play a6, b5, or we can take followed by knight c5, and we'll get a position which is close to what we'll see in the game. So okay, h3, rook b8. Here white decides to take, and usually we'll take with the knight. There's no point in retaking with the pawn because he's got stuff like this. Even f4 plus e5, this looks annoying for us, so taking with the knight makes much more sense. And after all, we want to keep our Sicilian setup with the pawn on d6 controlling the center, and we still have our queenside play. So white plays a4. This makes a lot of sense. He has to stop b5, and then we simply play d6. We are still following the ideas we were following before. Rook b8, b6, and well, we might play this, or even bishop b7 is now a part of our strategy. White plays rook to e1, reasonable. He moves the knight on e2. He'll also protect the e4 pawn, bishop b7. Here white played knight to f4. And okay, after these moves, which are natural by both sides, think about it. This position, black, he can try playing hedgehog setup. You probably heard of the hedgehog system. It is usually played in Sicilians, and here as black we have everything to play it. I mean, a6, e6, we move our queen to c7 and then our rooks to e8 or c8 or even d8 and c8, and every single piece as black is doing something. In hedgehog setups, white has better positions than the one he has here, so this is like a dream hedgehog for black. We even have the knight on c5 already, and we have ideas on e4. So in this position, black plays knight fd7. We have other moves, as I was saying, a6 is just fine. I mean, the purpose of e6 plus a6 is to play queen c7 and stop these shumps, and our queen on c7 is comfortable, but here there's no rush. This move I also like it, because first we want to shump here, and also we stop moves like b4 from white. So he plays bishop d2. Grishuk continues improving his position, and white plays queen e2. As you can see, white hasn't achieved much out of this opening because he's not attacking on the king side. On the queen side, we are supposed to have the advantage. I mean, look at our pieces. Our knights, bishop b7, rook c8, this bishop too. We are supposed to have the advantage there, and white is just being careful at this point with moves like queen e2. If he plays a move like b4, this is not recommended. c3 is suffering. I can play knight e6, and even if I hurt my pawn structure, I control d5, I keep on opening lines. But I guess if b4, this is even better because I attack here and I also attack b4. So basically, I'm winning a pawn. So b4 is not even possible. The game was queen e2, and here black plays the hedgehog formation with e6. As you can see, our moves are straightforward, and we have a position where we have no weaknesses, and white, if he advances too much, he might be creating weaknesses, as this b4 we saw a couple of moves ago. Actually, in this game, e6, this move is not binding because, as you can see, after e6, our knight on c5 doesn't have any squares. I mean, if white plays b4, we have to do some tactics. In the game, after e6, white played bishop e1, and black was just fine, but first let's see why Grishuk played e6 here. If b4, his idea was to take, and after this, knight takes e4. And as you can see, we have some tactics going on. Bishop takes, queen takes, rook takes. And it looks like black is just fine in this line. But yeah, we had to calculate it all before playing e6. Suppose we don't want to take any risks and we want to have this knight in safety, then we can play knight e5. If b4, worst case scenario, my knight goes back to d7 or even knight e6. Again, we know the bonuses of having a pawn on e6, and by playing b4, by advancing too much, white is just hurting himself. Here, for instance, there's no way to stop knight c4, his knight on c3 and his c2 pawn, they are both backwards, and, well, this is already trouble for white. Maybe a move like bishop e1 is required, but then I clearly dominate on the c file and f file as well. White is not lost, but he's definitely passive in this position. So, honestly, this line, as long as we remember this rook b8 plus b6, we'll have a good game. Of course, there are some move orders we have to pay attention to, but if h3 is the best move white has, then we know this is great news for black. Especially if we follow this game, because this Sicilian setup, I think black is doing great. And we have a lot of activity. It's not a dead draw position. Chances are probably equal, sure, but to play as Sicilian, where white's king is already there, it is saying a lot. So that is the main reason why we decide to play with c5. We know Pirc is flexible. We have a lot of ways of playing it. We can play with c6 and e5. Depending on the variations, we can play with c5. Sometimes we can play knight c6, e5. If you're looking for a flexible opening, then the Pirc is the opening for you. As I was saying, in this line, since white shows his cards, then we go for a Sicilian, because in Sicilian we don't mind playing with kings on the same side. So that's all for this video. I hope you found this useful. I hope you could learn something. And of course, I want to see you guys during my next chapters. Thank you.